Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and we're here today to talk about Watch Dogs, more specifically, Watch Dogs 2, as it was officially revealed today by Ubisoft. They did a small, roughly 20-minute stream event, showcased the game. They had some developers talking about the game, their new direction. They revealed the new city that we'll be playing in, which will be San Francisco. They revealed our new main character, our new anti-hero, Marcus Holloway. And they talked a lot about different mechanics in the game. They specifically highlighted, I think, a lot of the mechanics that people felt were never really as fleshed out as they could have been the first time around in the original Watch Dogs. I have a lot to say about Watch Dogs. I'll be completely honest. I don't feel that the first game was a terrible game, but I don't feel it was a great game. I thought it was a solid open world experience that suffered from a lot of small issues that really prevented it from ever feeling as special as I think a lot of us wanted it to feel. Now, what they showed us was a lot of the game today. There's quite a few gameplay clips. They talk a lot about the gameplay mechanics, like I said. They show off the open world. I very much believe that the visuals of the game are quite beautiful, but they feel very believable. I doubt we'll see a graphical downgrade issue again like we did with the original game. I know that was a really big hoo-ha for a lot of people, and I think that the first game received a lot of negative reception just because of that graphical downgrade. Possibly, rightfully so. Why are you lying about us? Why are you lying about something to us? Just show us the damn game. But at the end of the day, that to me wasn't why the first Watch Dogs, suffered. It had nothing to do with the graphical downgrade. It had everything to do with the gameplay and everything regarding the game's sandbox design. So let's keep in mind that everything we saw today for this little reveal was a vertical slice. Exactly what they wanted us to see. We always need to keep that in mind. That being said, as long as this stuff ends up being in the full game, we'll be good to go. And I think there are a lot of implementations that, regardless of them being vertical slices, are more than worth us talking about, and also talking about how they could improve the Watch Dogs experience. The first place I want to start is with the overall presentation of Watch Dogs 2, which looks phenomenal and much more detailed and much more believable, for lack of a better word, than anything we saw in the first game. My biggest problem with the first Watch Dogs was Aiden Pierce and the world. Aiden Pierce in Chicago, it was just like, okay, here we go. You felt like Aiden Pierce was the only hacker in existence, apart from a few other characters you met in the game's main story. Like, that was it, Where are all the other factions that would be forming up in a scenario like this? Why don't they exist? Why is it just me against the world? Things never really felt alive or realized, and as much as I liked the way that we could interact with pedestrians and get a small look into their lives, which to me did make them come to life a little bit more, I definitely felt some sort of regret when I accidentally ran one of them over because of the game's terrible driving system, which we'll talk about later. But overall, I never felt like that world was alive. It didn't feel memorable. When I think of memorable worlds, I think of stuff that's been done in games like Grand Theft Auto 5 and Sunset Overdrive. These are games that, to me, really brought their worlds to life. And those are worlds that I'm not going to forget anytime soon. I'm always going to remember my experience in Sunset Overdrive. There's no doubt about that. Watch Dogs 1 never really did that, so I'm excited to see the really big focus on bringing the world to life. And I'm not just talking about populating it with people that interact with one another. While it is something they are going to be doing in Watch Dogs 2, to me it's more about, what's actually going on? Like, what's the story, what's the situation, and how well are you going to represent that to me, the player? So, of course, the big thing is the CTOS system, which is this, giant connectivity between society, the people, the buildings, everything that exists inside of San Francisco in the game is connected to this system, and corporations are abusing it. So let's jump back to our main character real quick. Our new anti-hero is Marcus Holloway. He's a kid who was raised in Oakland and then was incorrectly profiled by the CTOS 2.0 system. This kind of starts him on his path to become a hacker, to become a part of DedSec, and to stand up against those who would abuse technology and use it against society in a negative manner. As I said, the game is going to be taking place in San Francisco, but they're also going to be using parts of Oakland, where Marcus grew up, as well as Silicon Valley. How could you not use Silicon Valley when chances are many of these corporations like Bloom, which is returning from the first game, exist inside of Silicon Valley? So already, you're just getting that kind of vibe. And then again, they start to flesh it out by saying, okay, you're one member of DedSec. DedSec is a large hacker organization. They have a social media site, they have hangouts, and they have different factions that are all going after the same goal, but in different manners. Some violent, some non-violent, some somewhere in between. So that, for me, when I first saw that, I was like, okay, this is a good step forward. But what I really loved was their huge push to make sure that all of these people who are part of DedSec, kind of fill their generation, and the fact that these are people who grew up with the internet. They're part of the internet. How would I say this? They've been influenced by internet society, by internet culture is the best way to put it. So the other side of that is the maker culture, and they're blending all of these elements together to be like, okay, this is the rebellion, this is DedSec, this is how you're a part of it. You've got extremely advanced 3D printing technology that allows you to print with metals to create weapons and guns and tasers. And then on the other hand of it, they spent a lot of time talking about Marcus's melee weapon, which they did a lot of research on the internet to develop. And they're like, what can we do for his melee weapon? Well, what would Marcus do? What would members of DedSec do? The maker type community? Well, they'd go online and they'd see what people are doing in terms of DIY. And they found a melee weapon, which was a billiard ball that had a hole drilled through it that was then attached to some paracord. And that is how they developed Marcus's melee weapon. And I love that, I'm a sucker. Whenever there's developers on screen and they start telling me about their design process behind something, I just start to drool and I get a little bit soft in the heart, and that's usually my weakness. So let's get back on point here. That stuff all looks really exciting, and while in my head, I'm like, yes, this is going to bring the world together, and everything's just going to feel so much more alive, and I feel like I'm actually a part of this corporation DedSec. It all comes down to how it's implemented in-game. So while I dig what they're doing, I like the exposure, the internet culture, the art styles that they're going with in terms of the DedSec propaganda, it all looks insanely awesome. I just hope that it all feels like it exists once we actually hop into the game's open world. Now, I talked in the beginning about, the sandbox element and how I felt that Watch Dogs 1 was a weak sandbox. Now, the biggest part of a sandbox is the tool set, and then the way that the player can use those tools to interact with the sandbox itself. Watch Dogs 1 was just very weak in this perspective. The hacking, I don't think, was nearly as fleshed out as it could have been. It didn't really give me that level of accessibility to the game world that I was expecting when they first showcased the game. Now, that wasn't something they ever lied about. I just always hoped for more when the game went live. And when it turned into, basically a distant way to activate, crosswalks and doorways, and then, this endless game of hacking cameras to gain access to things, it lost its luster very quick. Now, they're doing something called Hack Everything in Watch Dogs 2. Sounds great, but it's going to be all about the implementation and how it feels once we get our hands on it. Basically the idea that if there's a piece of technology, you can hack it. If it's a car that has a computer in it, or, like a forklift or something, you can hack it and you can drive it even. You can do mass hacks where you can hack all of these people's phones at once to create distractions. I like the idea of that, and I'd say that there shouldn't be too many negatives to increasing the amount of things that we can hack. The big question is whether or not that actually improves the hacking experience. In a way, you're just increasing the number of tools in the player's toolbox that they can use to interact with the sandbox. Let's just hope that the sandbox is interesting enough to actually interact with. Because I do like that idea. I like the idea of player choice, and they're keen on saying that it's up to you to play the game how you want to play. If you want to focus on the campaign, if you want to focus on co-op and multiplayer, if you want to focus on open world exploration, we're going to reward you with it. I'm going to hold them to that one. I'm going to hold you guys to that one. Hopefully that's true. So we'll see where the hacking goes. Honestly, them just saying you can hack everything doesn't mean too much to me. I'm interested to see how it actually all plays out. But at least they recognize that the hacking first time around wasn't where it needed to be, and that they're going to look to see how that they can further allow the player to influence the world. So I'm looking forward to that. There's no doubt about that. Now, the other big thing about a sandbox is how the player traverses the sandbox, right? Like, how do I get around this giant sandbox? Well, the first game had cars, and it had walking around and climbing ledges as Agent Pierce, which was all incredibly dull and boring. I'm going to be completely honest. I didn't like Aiden Pierce as a character much. You know, I didn't like his personality, and his inability to drive a car worth a damn and to do anything other than climb ledges was just always like, I just felt like I was sludging around everywhere. Obviously, we can't actually blame Aiden Pierce for the game's poor driving mechanics, but that was definitely a big problem, is that none of that ever felt exciting. You know, and to me, it didn't fit the overall concept of the world that I was supposed to be in. I'm supposed to be a vigilante hacker. I was supposed to be on the run, high-speed pursuits, you know, vaulting over ledges. None of that ever really came together the way I wanted it to in the first game. Things are looking promising for Watch Dogs 2, though. Number one, they're looking to improve the driving mechanics. What they were saying was, we want to make it accessible, but still fun. And I'm kind of like, well, if you thought the first game was accessible, it wasn't. I'm just saying. Accessible doesn't mean that the driving needs to be easy. And we're not looking to have Forza inside of my Watch Dogs 2. Just make it enjoyable. Make it so when I am in a high-speed chase, I'm like, hell yeah, this is, oh, e-brake slide, what's up, dude? Oh, I just hacked that, yeah. Like, you want to be able to string those awesome moments together when driving a vehicle. Now, the other side of it, of course, is the on-foot action, which, as I said, Aiden Pierce just really didn't do much. I love what they're doing with Marcus Holloway. He's using parkour, a full-fledged parkour system. They're doing crazy mocap for it. They've showcased a little bit of it in-game. I'm interested to see what it looks like when it's all actually running and flowing, but proper mantling techniques, proper parkour maneuvers. It looks badass, man. And the idea of implementing that all together with the new melee combat system and the new driving system, that's all really promising. What they've done is they've showcased a lot of vertical slices of a lot of different awesome gameplay mechanics. I hope that when it's all put together, this is the Watch Dogs game that we all wanted from the beginning. It looks promising. I'm a sucker for open world games. I'm a sucker for great sandboxes. Hopefully they can just give us the tool set, give us the sandbox, and it all kicks ass at the end of the day. Of course I have my concerns, and there's really not too much else to say other than give me the damn game and let me see if it's any good. We'll have to wait till November 15th, but I do plan on showing a little bit more of the game. You know, like I said, there's going to be multiplayer discussion. They're doing sort of a seamless co-op, which looks pretty cool. I actually liked what they did with the multiplayer inside of the first game, but I didn't like how it was instanced. You know, I like the idea of somebody actually coming into your world or you going into someone's world and actually being able to play the core game with one another. And that does look like the direction they're taking this time around. So hopefully they showcase a little bit more of that in the coming months. And fingers crossed that the 2-year development cycle is enough for them to release a game that isn't just awesome, but that is also free of any substantial bugs that could greatly overshadow its awesomeness. If you guys have any thoughts for me regarding what you saw today for Watch Dogs 2, let me know down in the comments section below. I will have a link to the full reveal trailer, not including my voice, right down in the description below. And if there's anything you'd like to say about the first game that you didn't like or that you liked, you know, anything that you hope they improve or anything that they have said they're going to improve with Watch Dogs 2 that has you excited, please let me know down in the comment section below. Let's get a little bit of a discussion flowing. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.